founder of YSA, which is an internet security company. And in the past, Neil served in a variety of roles at Google, including this book, The Foundation of Security, what every programmer needs to know. And he's also been granted several U.S. patents. He's received a PhD and a master's in computer science from Stanford and a bachelor's in computer science from Columbia. So Neil's here.
Sure, Nate, I'd be happy to. Delve into talking about entrepreneurship, and of course, if people have questions, please feel free to just interrupt me along the way. So the reason that I'm here to talk about entrepreneurship is, in my time, I've helped get 3 companies off the ground, either as an early employee or as an advisor to the company. But most recently, I started a new internet security company called Dacient. We raised just over $2 million in seed funding this past December from a very well-known group of investors. So how many of you use Twitter? Good, about half the room, so approximately half of the rooms are using Twitter, and I think that more and more are. So Mike Maples, who's one of the key investors in Twitter, is also an investor in my company. Stratton Sklavos, the former CEO of VeriSign, is also an investor. Eric Benamou, the former CEO at 3Com, is also an investor. And basically, one of the reasons that you may want to become an entrepreneur is there could be various reasons behind it, but one of the things I think is important is to solve hard problems in this world and bring that value to as many people as you can. And so I'll talk about it more in depth, but there's a lot of problems in this world. There's a lot of hard problems, and so the more people that we can have working on some of these hard problems, the more benefit you can bring to society. In any case, let me go ahead and start talking about entrepreneurship and give you a quick outline of what I'll be covering over, I think, the next maybe 40 minutes or so. My hope is that we'll have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So what I'll first start doing is talking about a couple case studies. I'll tell you about a couple Sindhi entrepreneurs of various kinds. There's, high tech is one area, but there's many kinds of entrepreneurs out there. I will talk about, what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur. I will talk about, for those of you that are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, how to do so. What are some of the things you might want to keep in mind? I'll give you some pointers on networking and talk about why networking is important. And then I'll tell you about where you can learn more. Sound reasonable? Yeah? Good. Very good. So let's start with just reviewing a little bit of background even before we get into the case studies. So this map depicts a couple trade routes that have been used ever since the Middle Ages. So these red and blue lines indicate the silk and spice trade routes. And one of the things that you might want to notice is that there's an area where these trade routes meet. And can anyone tell me what that area is? That is Sindh, right? The people of Sindh have been, at the heart of commerce for a very, very long time and have gone into many professions and, whether it be import, export, or trading of various kinds. And in the abstract of this talk, we mentioned that entrepreneurship is in the blood of Sindhis, and as Anil mentioned over the YSA list, while it's not anything biological or genetic, there are things that get passed down from generation to generation. And just given that our ancestors originated from this area, it's not surprising that a lot of the things that they know just inherently get passed on to us from one generation to the other. So this is where it all starts. But even in just the 1900s, especially in 1947 when partition was occurring, as we know, Nehru helped initiate the partition, and as we know, Gandhi was not so thrilled about it. And in fact, when that had started happening, one of the things that Gandhi asked is, why are all the Sindhis running away? Why are they going to Bombay and Madras and other places? He clearly acknowledged that it will not be the Sindhis who will be the losers, right? They make money for themselves. They bring value to the world to themselves wherever they go. And there's really no place in the world that Sindhis were not found, even back in 1947. So in addition to that, he also acknowledged that Sindhis, when they make all this money, they don't just kind of make it all for themselves and hoard it and buy themselves Mercedes and BMWs and great cars, but they also give it away. They are very generous. And so I think this is something that was known to Gandhi at 1947 and still holds true today. So, so this is where we start. What I'm going to do now is just give a couple case studies of some Sindhi entrepreneurs. One thing to keep in mind is that there are literally thousands of extremely successful Sindhi entrepreneurs. Many of you might be Sindhi entrepreneurs or aspiring Sindhi entrepreneurs. Your parents may have done very well just given given the factors behind our ancestry. I'm going to talk about three. The three that I'll talk about are listed here. The only thing that's in common between these three is that there was a Sadhu Vaswani convention held this past February, and these three folks gave talks there. So I'll just tell you a little bit about some of their backgrounds and their views on entrepreneurship. So I'll start with Ram Buksani. Ram Buksani was, and actually is, still an entrepreneur that grew up in India, and his family moved during partition. And they left everything behind. They started with nothing. And Buksani, after leaving that area, he made a very interesting decision. He made the decision to go to Dubai. What was interesting there is that when he got to Dubai, he started working for another company, and there was really nothing there at the time. There was no water, there was no airport, there was no electricity, there was no oil at the time. And that's interesting because if you go somewhere and it looks like all the opportunities are already taken and there's already a bustling environment, it means that there may not be much room to grow. So when you look for opportunities, look for what's been neglected, what's not there. And one thing to look out for is how to build up the area, and that's exactly what Buksani did. So he's currently the group president at ITL Group, but he didn't become group president overnight. Where he started was working for somebody else. He started after working for somebody else. He started a business in the area of textiles import-export, which is very characteristic Sindhi. What he did was so in addition to wanting to support commerce in various ways and bring commerce to this area, another thing is that he was invited to start the first limited liability company in Dubai. And this is a very big deal. The reason is, how many of you have ever been to the UAE or Dubai or areas like this? What happens if you're caught stealing in that area? Yeah. Yes, that's right. So you either you get deported and or Sharia law as your hands get cut off. So it's a society, it's a culture where there's an intense amount of accountability built into the culture. And Ram Buksani, because he had some connections to the royalty that was in control of the area, they gave him the opportunity to create the first limited liability company in that area. So limited liability companies are something that we take for granted here in the US, where you can start a company and if God forbid it doesn't work out, they can't get at your personal assets. This is not, and so you can imagine for a high accountability area like Dubai, this is not exactly normal. But this helped him get off the ground and start a textiles import-export business. His business grew and grew and grew and went into many other areas. But the other lesson to carry away from this is that very often it's not just how smart you are or what you do, it's also a bit about who you know, right? In this case, he happened to know these folks, and they gave him the ability to have this limited liability corporation, whereas others who were potential competitors did not. So who you know can sometimes be just as important as what you know. Just something to keep in mind for those of you that are aspiring entrepreneurs. So that's a little bit about Ram Buksani and some things we can learn from his experience. He has a book, by the way, called Taking the High Road, which can be